honored, which, you know, is just staggeringly good, and, you know, reinforces how strong investigative journalism is right now. I think stronger than ever. It's great to see that you have such a big turnout at this meeting. And Manny, when he called me yesterday to make sure I was going to make it and still come, the thing he was most excited about on the phone, he said to me, we had to take out 2 extra job boards. So I think that there's some healthy recruiting going on too. So I think our joint endeavor, the thing we are all passionate about and commit our working lives to, is in very good condition. So I'm really, really honored and proud to be speaking to you today. This has actually been a season for many of us to wax nostalgic about our mutual calling. Because in case you are the only people in America who haven't caught Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein on TV recently, it's the 40th anniversary of Watergate this weekend. And like a lot of diggers my age, their reporting is what sparked my passion to become a journalist. All those years I spent covering money and politics means that I have a little computer chip embedded in my brain. It's Hal Holbrook, and he keeps saying, follow the money. As managing editor of the Times and now as executive editor, I hope you can see that our news report reflects my commitment to and love of investigative journalism, and for telling what I always call the story behind the story. I'm immensely proud of the investigations we've done in recent months, in which we've broadened our scope and our ambition to report globally on very, very complex stories that have many tentacles. I'm talking here about David Barstow's amazing work on Walmart's illegal bribes in Mexico, Charles Duhigg and a team of our business reporters, the work they've done on the Apple economy, and scoops that we've had in the Bo Xilai corruption story in China. Doing investigative reporting overseas on turf war, corruption, and even censorship are factors has become second nature to many of our reporters. On these shores, I'm tremendously proud of all the enterprise stories we've done on the super PACs and the billionaires behind them. Sheldon Adelson and the Koch brothers may be the most important behind-the-scenes players in this election, especially considering Watergate history, an environment where there are giant secret campaign contributions, is ripe for even more investigation. We've also broken new ground with Walt Bogdanich's stories on the horse racing world, the terrible treatment of the developmentally disabled in New York State, and stay tuned, tomorrow we have a great series starting on very bad halfway houses who have a friend in Governor Christie in New Jersey. So at the Times, I believe our investigative reporting has never been more ambitious or more important. I realize we are blessed, first by a publisher who has never believed in cutting his way to profitability in our newsroom, and who recognizes that serious investigative reporting is a defining trait of quality journalism at the Times. And Matt Purdy has put together a team of the very best investigative reporters and editors, while literally every desk at the Times now, from sports to science, has juicy investigative targets in its sight. It was very tempting to me to use this time just to tell you some of the stories behind these stories, and I know that's one of the wonderful things about the IRE conventions or the panels where you hear the background detail of how incredible stories have been woven together. But I actually feel compelled to talk today on a topic that I spoke often about both as Washington Bureau Chief and then as Managing Editor. And that's government secrecy and the nexus between investigative reporting and classified secrets. With new calls for leak investigations in the air, this is again an urgent matter. The Obama administration has mounted 6 prosecutions involving leaks under the 1917 Espionage Act. and that's double the number in all previous administrations combined. As the legal scholar Jeffrey Stone has noted, for more than 215 years, the United States seems to have flourished in the absence of any federal legislation directly prohibiting the press from publishing government secrets. This is no accident of history. It fulfills the guiding principle of the First Amendment, that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. Also, according to Stone, there has not been a single documented instance in the history of the United States in which the press's publication of a legitimate but newsworthy government secret has gravely harmed the national interest. It's worth remembering that Erwin Griswold, who was a Solicitor General who argued the Nixon administration's case in the Pentagon Papers battle, 18 years after the administration lost that case in 1971, Griswold was making a speech and he admitted that he knew of no scintilla of evidence that the national security had been damaged by the publication of the papers. Indeed, there's been much more trouble caused when the press has self-censored itself. The Times withheld publishing what it knew in advance about the Bay of Pigs invasion. And after that fiasco, President Kennedy confided to Scotty Reston that he actually wished the Times had published its story because it might have prevented the invasion from taking place. Washington's culture of secret sources and leaks is as vibrant as it was when Max Frankel, then Washington bureau chief of the Times, filed his famous affidavit in the Pentagon Papers case, defending the utility of leaks, both for the government and the press. In the affidavit, Frankel paints a picture of Washington as a giant, bustling marketplace of secrets, which is how I found it during the 22 years I worked there, where government officials and reporters are locked in a mutually beneficial embrace. According to Frankel, for the vast majority of secrets that there has developed between the government and the press a rather simple rule of thumb. The government hides what it can, pleading necessity as long as it can, and the press pries out what it can, pleading a need and a right to know. Each side of this game regularly wins or loses a round or two. Each fights with the weapons at its command. When the government loses a secret or two, it simply adjusts to a new reality. It's as true a picture today as it was when Frankel wrote those words. He even describes how he was leaked classified information about Russia standing in LBJ's swimming pool in Texas. And his source, the president himself. The marketplace, by Frankel's estimation, operated for the good of the country, even if its participants had venal motives and were overtly using each other. What concerns me now is what's being said of the marketplace now. Two of the stories that have inspired calls for new leak investigations were published by the Times, involving details of targeted drone killings and cyber attacks. Prominent Democrats complain that the sources who disclosed the details and aspects of these operations to Times reporters had endangered national security by letting America's enemies know too much about secret programs. Republicans, meanwhile, have accused the Obama administration itself of purposely leaking sensitive details in order to portray the president as an active and able protector of the national security, a kind of superhero president. Both clearly can't be true. We have had sober and respectful discussions with the Obama administration over sensitive stories, including all the stories we did on the WikiLeaks documents and the recent stories I mentioned that have stirred controversies. While Washington politicians decry leaks, I'd like to emphasize that almost all the stories that the Times has published on sensitive security issues have not come from leaks. Sensitive stories do not usually just fall into our hands. I think all of you know that. We often report on them for months or even years. We double and triple check. We examine the motives of our sources and seek other sources with different points of view. We challenge our sources when contradictory information emerges. Then we listen. No article on a classified program gets published until the responsible officials have been given a fair opportunity to comment. And if they argue against publication of the story and make a case that it presents a real danger to national security, we put things on hold and give them a respectful hearing. Sometimes we have agreed to admit certain details from stories which we deem not essential for readers' understanding of the story. Sometimes we have held stories to give us time to report more deeply. Here I'll repeat words that the Times published a few years ago. Editors start from the premise that citizens can be entrusted with unpleasant and complicated news, and that the more they know, the better they'll be able to make their views known. Our default position, our job, is to publish information that we are convinced it is fair and accurate. The question we start with as journalists is not why we publish, but why we should withhold information of significance. This was expressed best in the Pentagon Papers case by Justice Hugo Black, who wrote, "The government's power to censor the press was abolished so that the press would remain forever free to censure the government. The press was protected so it could bear the secrets of government and inform the people." My predecessor as executive editor, Bill Keller, often bemoaned the promiscuity with which the government, federal and even state and local level governments, apply its most secret and sensitive classifications. When the Times was criticized for publishing stories about financial monitoring of terror suspects during the Bush administration, Bill pointed out that Treasury Secretary Snow himself had taken reporters on a foreign trip with him and showed off some of the same methods that we had written about. Many government officials have talked about the drone program, emphasizing the success of the Obama administration in finding and killing terrorists. One of the most classified programs in recent history, the killing of bin Laden, has been revisited by government officials in minute detail. The two most recent stories, the ones involving secret counterterrorism programs during the Bush administration and others, were published after months of old-fashioned shoe leather reporting, just the kind of reporting you celebrated with your awards. And we published them because the stories were launched because we think one of the most compelling stories right now is the background of President Obama and his administration's national security policies. There are a few more subjects that I could think of that would be more in the public interest. After all, cyber warfare is a new battlefield where there are no agreements regulating the use of malware viruses. So doesn't the public need the information to evaluate this new kind of battle, especially when it's waged in its name? Furthermore, when the existence of drone and cyber attacks are widely known but officially classified